Sunday morning in Charlotte, North Carolina. A respected pastor stands before 800 devoted parishioners, preaching about forgiveness and betrayal. In the third row sits his beautiful wife, their 2 children by her side. She looks like the perfect pastor's wife, elegant, composed, faithful. But behind those green eyes, a secret so dark it would shatter everything. Within 72 hours, she would be dead. Her own husband would stand over her body, covered in her blood, believing he'd committed the perfect crime. But what he didn't know was that one detective saw what no one else could see. And the truth? It's more twisted than you could ever imagine. Stay with me, because this is the true story of how a man of God became a cold-blooded killer, and how the woman he loved paid the ultimate price for loving the wrong brother. Before we dive into this nightmare, there are 3 questions that will haunt you through this entire story. First, how does a respected pastor, a man who counseled hundreds, who preached about love and redemption every Sunday, how does that man plan the brutal murder of his own wife? Second, what drives a woman to risk everything, her children, her reputation, her very life, for a forbidden love with her husband's brother? And third, the question that kept Detective Sarah Martinez up at night. What are the warning signs we all miss when someone we trust is capable of murder? Because here's what makes this case absolutely chilling. From the outside, the Hendersons looked perfect. 2 beautiful children, a Victorian home with a white picket fence, a thriving church, respect, status, the American dream. But underneath that perfect surface was betrayal, rage, and a darkness so profound it would end in bloodshed. So I need you to pay attention, because the devil, he doesn't always wear horns. Sometimes he wears a perfectly pressed suit and stands behind a pulpit. Let's go back 14 years before that fatal November night. The year is 2011, and Jessica Williams is 25 years old, working at a bank in Charlotte and attending Grace Community Church at her parents' insistence. She's beautiful, smart, ambitious, but there's a loneliness in her eyes that catches the attention of 2 very different brothers. Robert Henderson is 31 years old at the time, an assistant pastor with razor-sharp ambition and a 10-year plan for his life. Everything about Robert screams control. His sermons are meticulously prepared. His suits are perfectly pressed. Even his smile seems calculated. He sees Jessica and pursues her the way he pursues everything, methodically, persistently, with absolute determination. He brings her flowers every Sunday. He writes her thoughtful notes about scripture. He introduces her to the church leadership, making it clear that she could be the perfect pastor's wife. Then there's David Henderson, 5 years younger than Robert, 26 years old, and Robert's complete opposite. Where Robert is rigid, David is spontaneous. Where Robert calculates every word, David speaks from the heart. He works construction, shows up to church maybe twice a year, and has a smile that could light up a room. At family gatherings, he's the one making everyone laugh, telling stories, living in the moment. Jessica notices him, of course. How could she not? But he's just her fiancé's younger brother, the irresponsible one, the one who doesn't have his life together. And at 25, what Jessica thinks she wants is stability, security, a man with a plan. So when Robert proposes after 8 months of courtship, she says yes. The wedding is beautiful. The church is packed. Everyone says they're the perfect couple. And maybe for a while, they are. Over the next decade, Robert builds his empire. Grace Community Church grows from 200 members to over 800. They build a new sanctuary. They start a radio station. Robert becomes one of the most respected religious leaders in Mecklenburg County. They have 2 children, Tyler in 2011, Olivia in 2014. They buy a beautiful Victorian home 2 blocks from the church. From the outside, everything is perfect. But inside that house, Jessica is slowly disappearing. She's not a wife anymore. She's a symbol, the pastor's wife, the perfect accessory to Robert's perfect image. She teaches third grade at Lincoln Elementary, patient, beloved by her students, one of the best teachers in the school. But when she comes home, she's playing a role. Smile at the church functions, host the monthly dinners, sit in the third row every Sunday with the children, never complain, never question, never showed the world anything but perfection. And David? He's been there the whole time, watching his brother's perfect life unfold. He starts his own construction company. He struggles financially. He shows up to family dinners and makes the kids laugh. He's Uncle David, the fun one, the one who brings the best birthday presents and doesn't lecture about homework and church attendance. And every time he sees Jessica, there's something there. A connection neither of them can quite name. A what if that neither dares to speak out loud. Until 3 months before that fatal November night, when everything changes.
August 2024, Robert is at a 3-day church conference in Raleigh. The house needs some bathroom renovation work. Jessica calls David. It's innocent, right? He's a contractor. She needs help. He shows up on a Tuesday afternoon with his tools and his easy smile. They start talking while he works on the tiles. Really talking, maybe for the first time in 14 years. She tells him about how lonely she is, how she feels like she's suffocating in her perfect life, how Robert sees her as a function, not a person, how she can't remember the last time her husband asked about her dreams, her fears, her actual self beneath the role she plays. And David? He listens. He doesn't judge, he doesn't lecture her about duty and sacred vows. He just sees her. Really sees her. The woman beneath the pastor's wife costume. And then, in that moment, something shifts. He takes her hand. She doesn't pull away. "I've always seen you, Jess," he says quietly. "Even before you married him, I've always seen exactly who you are." That's when it starts. Not with passion, but with understanding, with someone finally seeing her as more than a symbol. The affair unfolds slowly over the next 3 months. Secret meetings at his warehouse on the industrial side of town. Text messages deleted as soon as they're read. Her heart racing every time his name appears on her phone. She knows it's wrong. God, does she know it's wrong. She's not just cheating on her husband. She's destroying her children's family, risking her career, committing what her religious community would consider an unforgivable sin. And with his brother, it's the ultimate betrayal. But she can't stop, because with David she feels alive again. She feels desired, not as an accessory, but as a woman. He asks about her day, her thoughts, her feelings. He touches her like she matters. He looks at her like she's not invisible. But secrets in small communities, they don't stay secret long. Mrs. Thompson, the neighbor with too much time on her hands, sees David's truck parked at the Henderson house one Wednesday morning. She mentions it to Mrs. Parker at Bible study. Mrs. Parker mentions it to Deacon James Wilson. And James, he tells Robert. That Sunday morning in church, when Robert preaches about forgiveness and betrayal, his eyes keep finding his wife in the congregation. He watches how she won't meet his gaze. He sees the guilt written all over her face. And when he mentions David's name in passing after the service, the way she flinches tells him everything he needs to know. His wife, his brother, the two people he trusted most in the world. And suddenly, Robert Henderson, the man of God, the pillar of the community, feels something he's never felt before. Not just anger, not just betrayal, but a cold, calculating rage that whispers one terrifying truth. This cannot stand. This will not stand, and he will make sure it never, ever comes to light. Pause for a second and drop a comment. Type, "I'm still watching" if you're still with me on this twisted journey. I need to know who's really paying attention, because what happens next? You won't believe it. Monday morning after that Sunday service, Jessica can barely breathe. She knows Robert suspects something. She can see it in every look, every tense silence, every loaded question. That afternoon, she takes a risk and drives to David's warehouse. She has to warn him. "Robert knows," she says, her hands shaking as she sits in David's passenger seat. He doesn't have proof, but he knows. David takes her hands. His calloused palms, stained with paint and concrete dust, hold hers gently. "Then tell him the truth, Jess. I'm tired of hiding. I love you. I've always loved you. Let's stop pretending. Are you insane? Her voice cracks. We have children. Your brother runs the biggest church in town. This would destroy hundreds of people who believe in him. It would destroy Tyler and Olivia. But what about what we believe in? David's eyes search hers desperately. I can't keep watching you go home to him every night. I can't keep pretending you're just my sister-in-law when you're the only woman I've ever really loved. That conversation is overheard by no one, but James Wilson happens to drive past the warehouse that afternoon, and he sees Jessica's car parked in the shadows, sees her and David talking intensely through the windshield. He takes a photo on his phone, and that night, he shows it to Robert. I think you need to see this, brother. Everything changes. In that moment, Robert doesn't rage. He doesn't shout. He just stares at that photo for a long, long time. Then he thanks James calmly and asks him not to mention this to anyone. Not yet. He needs time to think, to pray, to decide what to do. But Robert isn't praying. Not anymore. He's planning. Because you see, there are 3 problems facing Robert Henderson. First, his reputation is everything. If this affair comes out, he loses his position, his church, his status, his entire identity. Second, divorce would be a public admission of failure, the pastor who couldn't keep his own house in order. And third, the most important, he genuinely believes that his children would be better off without a mother who would betray their family this way.
The confrontation happens on Wednesday evening. Robert comes home early. Jessica's phone is on the coffee table. She forgot it that morning. He's seen the missed calls, 4 from David. When she walks through the door, he's standing there, her phone in his hand. James saw you at David's warehouse, in your car, talking to him like lovers. The words hang in the air like poison. Jessica's face drains of color. She tries to lie at first, but Robert doesn't let her. How long, Jess? How long have you been sleeping with my brother? 3 months, she whispers. And then the truth explodes between them like a bomb. She tells him about the loneliness, the feeling invisible, David's attention, understanding, the way he actually sees her as a human being. Robert listens to it all, and then he makes his choice. Here's what's going to happen, he says, his voice terrifyingly calm. You will never see David again. You will stay in this marriage. You will continue to play the perfect pastor's wife. And if you don't, I will take the children. I will tell the entire community what you are. Your teaching career will be over. The children will hear about it at school. And David, one word from me to the right people, and he won't even be able to find work as a janitor. Jessica realizes she's trapped. And in that moment, she understands something crucial. She's not married to a man of God. She's married to a man who values his reputation more than anything, including her life. That same night, David shows up at their house. He wants to talk to Robert man to man. The 2 brothers stand on the porch for 10 minutes. No one hears what they say. But neighbors later report that David left looking shattered, and Robert stood there watching his truck disappear with an expression one neighbor described as almost satisfied. What Robert told David we'll never know for certain, but David understood one thing clearly. He'd lost. His brother had won again, like he always did. And Jessica, she was trapped. The next day, David starts packing to leave for Seattle. A fresh start. Away from his brother's shadow, away from the woman he loves but can't have. Jessica knows she'll probably never see him again. And in her Victorian house, with the perfect lawn and the perfect children, she realizes she's living in a prison. A beautiful, suffocating prison with no way out. Friday, November 15th, 2024. This is the day everything ends. Jessica wakes up knowing something is wrong. The air in the house feels different, heavier, dangerous.
Robert has barely spoken to her in 2 days beyond what's necessary in front of the children. That morning, he's almost pleasant. "We're having dinner with James and Michelle tonight. Don't forget to make your famous meatloaf. James loves it." The normalcy of it is surreal. Jessica goes through her day at school in a fog. She's teaching 8-year-olds about math, but her mind is spinning. Can she really live like this? 40 more years of pretending? 40 more years of being invisible? That afternoon, she runs into Detective Sarah Martinez at the supermarket. Sarah is relatively new to Charlotte, a member of Grace Community Church. But there's something about her, those sharp gray eyes, that seem to see through people. "You look tired, Jessica. Are you all right?" "Work, kids, you know how it is," Jessica replies with a forced smile. Sarah studies her face for a moment too long. "If anything happens, you know where to find me." What could happen? But Sarah's expression is serious. Sometimes the happiest families hide the darkest secrets. Those words will haunt Jessica for the rest of her very short life.
That evening, James and Michelle Wilson arrive for dinner. Robert is the perfect host. Charming, warm, attentive. He jokes with the kids. He compliments Jessica's cooking. He discusses his plans for expanding the church with James. It's all so normal, it feels like a nightmare. After the guests leave and the children are in bed, Robert and Jessica are alone in the kitchen. She's washing dishes, he's drying them, a domestic scene, but the tension is suffocating. "That was a complete farce," Jessica finally says. "You played your role well today, almost convincing." And that's when Robert snaps. Not with rage, but with something colder, more terrifying. He puts down the dish he's drying and turns to her. "I've been thinking about our situation," he says calmly, "about the children, about the church, about what's best for everyone. And I've realized something. There's only one way to solve this problem permanently." "What are you talking about?" Jessica feels ice in her veins. "You'll die tonight. A robbery gone wrong, a home invasion, something tragic that will make the community rally around me and the children. Grief instead of scandal, sympathy instead of shame." Jessica stares at her husband, unable to process what she's hearing. "You can't be serious. Robert, you're a pastor. You're a man of God." "I'm a man who's been betrayed by those closest to him, and I'm doing what needs to be done." The words are delivered with terrifying calmness, like he's discussing church renovation plans. "The children will hear," she whispers, backing toward the door. "No, they won't. I put sleeping pills in their hot chocolate an hour ago. They won't wake up until morning." Horror floods Jessica's body. He planned this. He drugged their children. This isn't impulse. This is premeditated murder. "Robert, please, think of Tyler and Olivia. They need their mother. They need to grow up without shame, without being the children of an adulteress. They'll remember you as a hero who died protecting them, not as the woman who destroyed our family." He takes a large kitchen knife from the drawer. Jessica screams, but the sound catches in her throat. She tries to run, but Robert is faster. The first stab hits her stomach. The pain is indescribable, white-hot, burning, overwhelming. She doubles over, blood seeping between her fingers. "Robert," she chokes out, "I love the children." "I know. That's why I'm doing this." The second stab pierces near her heart. Jessica collapses. Her vision is fading. The last thing she sees is her husband's face, calm, focused, showing no remorse whatsoever. "I'm sorry, Jess," he whispers, delivering the fatal blow to her neck. "But I had no choice." Jessica Henderson dies on her kitchen floor at 11:47 p.m. Her last thought is of her children sleeping upstairs, drugged, unaware that their father has just murdered their mother. Robert stands over her body for several minutes. Then he gets to work. He breaks the back window, knocks over chairs, takes Jessica's jewelry and hides it in the garage, makes it look like a struggle, a robbery. He washes the knife carefully and puts it back with the other kitchen knives. He showers, changes into clean pajamas, and goes to bed. At 7 a.m., he'll discover the body. The perfect crime. Saturday morning, November 16th, 7:23 a.m. Robert Henderson screams wake the entire neighborhood. "Help! Someone help! Jessica!" Neighbors pour into the street. Mrs. Thompson reaches the house first. She finds Robert on his knees beside his wife's body, sobbing, shaking her shoulders. The scene looks exactly like what it's supposed to look like. A devastated husband discovering his murdered wife. The Charlotte police arrive within minutes. The house is cordoned off. Forensic teams photograph everything. Robert is taken to the living room, away from the body. He's the picture of grief, disheveled, crying, barely able to speak. At 8:15 a.m., Detective Sarah Martinez gets the call, and when she arrives at the scene, something immediately feels wrong to her. The kitchen shows signs of a struggle. Overturned chairs, broken window, blood everywhere. But there are details that don't add up. The victim has 3 stab wounds, but no defensive wounds on her hands. No scratches, no bruises suggesting she fought back. For someone surprised by a home invader, that's strange.
Tom Rivera, the crime scene investigator, shows Sarah the knife. It's from their kitchen set. It was found in the sink, washed clean, but we found microscopic blood traces. What kind of burglar washes the murder weapon and leaves it at the scene? Sarah asks. The children are still asleep upstairs. Unnaturally so. When Sarah checks on them, they're in such a deep sleep that even the commotion downstairs hasn't woken them. She orders immediate blood tests. In the living room, Robert tells his story. He went to bed at 11. Jessica was cleaning the kitchen after dinner with friends. He came downstairs for coffee in the morning and found her. He heard nothing during the night. The children were exhausted and went to bed early. It's a perfect story. Almost too perfect. The blood test results come back. Both children have zolpidem, sleeping pills, in their systems, enough to keep them unconscious until late morning. Sarah asks Robert directly, "Do you take sleeping pills?" "Yes, for stress. My doctor prescribed zolpidem last month." "Did you take any last night?" "No, I fell asleep fine." "What about the children?" "Just vitamins. Why?" Sarah doesn't reveal what they found. Instead, she asks about his marriage. Any problems? Any arguments? Robert insists everything was fine. They loved each other. Everyone loved Jessica. She had no enemies. But when Sarah asks about David, his brother who recently left for Seattle, Robert's composure slips for just a second, and Sarah sees it. Over the next few days, Sarah digs deeper. She interviews neighbors, church members, Jessica's colleagues, and a picture emerges that's very different from the perfect family image. Several people mentioned tension between Robert and Jessica recently. One colleague at the school says Jessica seemed frightened the last few weeks. Mrs. Thompson, the neighbor, reports seeing David's truck at the house multiple times when Robert wasn't home. James Wilson reluctantly admits he'd told Robert about seeing Jessica and David together at the warehouse. The affair. That's the motive. By Tuesday, Sarah has enough to bring Robert in for another interview. This time she's direct. "Mr. Henderson, we found your wife's jewelry hidden in your garage. What kind of burglar hides the loot at the crime scene instead of taking it?" Robert's face goes pale. "I don't know, maybe something scared him off. Or maybe someone wanted to make it look like a robbery." Sarah leans forward. "Your children had sleeping pills in their blood.
your prescription. The bottle in your medicine cabinet is missing exactly enough pills to dose 2 children. And we found something else in your computer history. Searches about how long drugs remain in children's bloodstreams. Searches made the day before your wife died. The room goes silent. Mr. Henderson, I'm going to ask you one more time, what really happened Friday night? And that's when Robert's perfect facade finally cracks. Thursday morning, 4 days after the murder, Detective Sarah Martinez arrives at Robert Henderson's home with a search warrant and an arrest warrant. The forensic evidence is overwhelming. The drugged children, the hidden jewelry, the computer searches, the lack of defensive wounds on the victim, the washed knife, and testimony from James Wilson about the affair and Robert's reaction when he found out. Robert is arrested while the children are at school. Robert Henderson, you are under arrest for the first-degree murder of Jessica Henderson. You have the right to remain silent. At the police station, Robert finally breaks. Maybe because the weight of guilt is too much. Maybe because he knows the evidence is insurmountable. Or maybe because deep down, part of him wants to confess, wants someone to understand why he did what he did. She ruined everything, he says, staring at the table. His voice is flat, emotionless. 15 years of marriage, my reputation, the church, the children's future, everything I built, she destroyed in 3 months. What about your children? Did you think about them when you killed their mother? I thought only of them, Robert's voice rises. They would have grown up as the children of an adulteress, whispered about, pitied, living in shame because of what their mother did. Now they'll remember her as a hero, a woman who died protecting her family. Except she didn't die protecting her family. She died because you murdered her. The words hang in the air, and for the first time, you can see the full weight of what he's done crash down on Robert Henderson. He starts to cry. Not the performed grief from Saturday morning, real, gut-wrenching sobs. I loved her, he whispers. For 15 years, I loved her more than anything. And she betrayed me with the one person who always envied me, my own brother. How was I supposed to live with that? How was I supposed to stand in front of my congregation every Sunday, knowing that my wife loved my brother? Sarah doesn't respond. There's nothing to say. Love and murder. They're standing in the wreckage of both. Robert provides a full confession. Every detail of his plan. The sleeping pills in the children's hot chocolate, the staged burglary, the hidden jewelry, the washed knife, even the moment he stood over Jessica's body, watching her die, believing he was saving his family's reputation.
The trial, 8 months later, is straightforward. Robert pleads guilty to first-degree murder with premeditation. There's no defense to mount. The evidence is overwhelming. The confession is complete. The sentencing is swift. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Tyler and Olivia move to Wilmington to live with Jessica's aunt. They're told the truth, that their father killed their mother because she had an affair with Uncle David. Their perfect family, perfect home, perfect life, all of it was a lie. They grow up, eventually. They build their own lives, but they never visit their father in prison, not once. David Henderson returns from Seattle for the trial. He testifies about the affair, about the last conversation with his brother on that porch. He looks broken. The guilt of surviving when Jessica didn't weighs on him every day. Could he have done something different? Could he have saved her? The questions haunt him forever. And Robert? He sits in a North Carolina state prison, wearing orange instead of his perfectly pressed suits. He has decades to think about what he did, to replay that night in his mind, to wonder if there was another way. But the answer, of course, is yes. There was always another way. He just couldn't see past his pride, his reputation, his rage. But here's what haunts Detective Sarah Martinez most about this case. Something she discovered during the investigation, but never made public. Something that changes everything you think you know about this story. 3 weeks before the murder, Jessica Henderson went to see a divorce attorney. Sarah found the appointment in her calendar, hidden under a fake entry about a doctor's appointment. She interviewed the attorney after the murder. And here's what Jessica told that lawyer. She was planning to leave Robert. She was going to file for divorce, fight for custody of the children, and start a new life. Not with David. She knew that relationship could never work publicly, but on her own, as herself, free from the role she'd been playing for 15 years. She had been gathering evidence of Robert's emotional abuse, his threats, his controlling behavior. She had recorded conversations on her phone, recordings that would have given her a strong case for custody. She was 2 weeks away from filing the papers, 2 weeks away from freedom. But Robert found out, and that's when he started planning her murder. Because it was never really about the affair with David. It was about control. About the fact that Jessica was going to leave him, going to expose him, going to take the children and destroy the perfect image he'd spent 15 years building. David wasn't the real threat. Jessica's independence was. Her decision to finally choose herself. That's what Robert couldn't allow. So he eliminated the problem, permanently. And do you know what the most chilling part is? If Jessica had just kept playing her role, kept being the perfect pastor's wife, kept suffering in silence, she'd probably still be alive. Her crime wasn't adultery. Her crime was wanting to be free. And for that, Robert Henderson sentenced her to death. The recordings Jessica made, they're sealed in the court records. But Sarah Martinez listened to them during the investigation, and she says they reveal a woman who was trapped, terrified, and desperate for a way out. A woman who knew her husband was capable of something terrible. A woman who almost escaped. 2 weeks, that's all she needed. 2 more weeks.
So, what do we learn from the tragedy of Jessica Henderson? What do we take away from this nightmare that unfolded in a beautiful Victorian house 2 blocks from a church? First, the most dangerous person isn't always the stranger breaking through your window at night. Sometimes it's the person sleeping next to you, the person who knows your weaknesses, your fears, your vulnerabilities. Second, abuse doesn't always leave bruises you can see. Robert never hit Jessica, but he controlled her, isolated her, threatened her, and ultimately murdered her. Emotional abuse is still abuse, and it can be just as deadly. Third, listen to that voice in your gut. Sarah Martinez saw something in Jessica's eyes at that supermarket. A fear, a silent plea for help. She wishes now she'd pushed harder, asked more questions. But we all have moments like that, when we see something wrong and convince ourselves it's not our business. Maybe this story reminds us to trust those instincts, to ask the uncomfortable questions, to offer help even when it's not asked for. And finally, the image people project is almost never the full truth. The Hendersons looked perfect from the outside, but behind closed doors, they were falling apart. Robert's perfect pastor image hid a controlling, vengeful man capable of murder. Jessica's perfect wife image hid a desperately unhappy woman planning her escape. We never know what's really happening in someone else's life. Today, Robert Henderson is 50 years old, serving life without parole. His children are adults now. Tyler is 27, Olivia is 24. They've changed their last names. They've built lives far away from Charlotte and the tragedy that destroyed their family. Grace Community Church survived the scandal, though many members left. A new pastor was appointed. Life went on. But for the people who knew Jessica, the 3rd graders she taught, the neighbors who saw her smile every Sunday, the friends who thought they knew her, there's always that question. Could we have saved her? Should we have seen the signs? The answer, painful as it is maybe. Maybe if one more person had asked if she was okay. Maybe if someone had noticed the fear in her eyes. Maybe if our society made it easier for women to leave dangerous marriages without shame or economic devastation. Maybe. But we can't change what happened to Jessica. All we can do is learn from it. Watch for the signs. Ask the hard questions. Believe women when they tell us they're in danger. And understand that sometimes the person who preaches about love on Sunday is capable of murder by Friday night. So here's my question for you. Have you ever ignored warning signs about someone because they seemed too normal, too successful, too respectable to be dangerous? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt like Jessica, trapped in a life that looks perfect from the outside but feels suffocating on the inside? Share your story if you're comfortable. This community is here to support you. And if this case made you think, made you feel something, hit that like button and share this video. Because the more people who understand how domestic violence really works, not with stereotypical scenarios, but in beautiful homes with respected community members, the more lives we might save. But before you go, I need to know, what shocked you most about this case? The fact that Robert was a pastor, that Jessica was planning to leave, or that the children were drugged during the murder? Comment below with your reaction. I read every single one, and your insights make these videos better. Thanks for watching, for caring about these stories, and for honoring Jessica's memory by listening to her story. See you in the next one.